My guest at this time is Grace Marie Turner. She is president of the Galen Institute, one of the leading and most respected healthcare policy organizations in the country. We want to get her brief reaction to Judge Reed O'Connor's striking down of the Affordable Care Act on Friday, but more importantly, what happens legislatively, assuming the courts ultimately back up Judge O'Connor. And Grace Marie, thanks so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, as always, Greg.
Well, our regular listeners will know that you're pretty happy with this decision, I'm guessing. Explain why you like it and what you think the long-term legal prospects are here.
Judge O'Connor, he's the judge from from the Fort Worth area, but he's a federal district court judge, and the Texas Public Policy Foundation and 20 states basically have challenged the ACA because Congress repealed the fine for noncompliance with the individual mandate when they passed the tax bill last year. So the individual mandate penalty is gone. If you remember, in 2012, when Justice Roberts issued his opinion, and many people saying twisting himself into a pretzel to do it, to uphold Obamacare, he did it based upon saying that the individual mandate by itself is unconstitutional because it violates the Constitution's Commerce Clause in the federal government directing us to purchase a private product. But he said it could be upheld because basically it fits under Congress's taxing power. Congress can tax people for doing something or not doing something. And so that upheld it. But without the tax, the 20 states said, therefore the individual mandate is unconstitutional. And the judge is very, very meticulous in this 55-page decision in showing that the language that Justice Roberts used in saying the individual mandate was central to the functioning of Obamacare. You can't have one without the other. So we use that to say we can't take out the individual mandate because it's the center pole in the tent of the whole law. And so basically Judge O'Connor has said, therefore the whole law has to come down because it also did not have a clause in it saying any provision in this law is struck down, the rest of it stands. They didn't put that in there. So basically, any one major pole is pulled out of this thing, it should all fall. And so his decision shocked people. Not only did he say, yes, the states are right in saying that the individual mandate is no longer valid because the tax is gone, that Justice Roberts says the only thing that propped it up, and therefore the whole law has to fall.
Grace Marie, you also wrote recently for Forbes magazine saying, don't panic, there's time to get Obamacare replacement right. And it points out that the legislature is the place where this law really ought to be changed. Republicans tried to do that in 2017. The second try passed the House, but nothing ever ultimately got through the Senate to even really set up a House-Senate conference to get this done. You and I talked several times this year about your work within the grassroots and trying to get congressional leaders to take up a more state-focused approach here, block granting it back to the states and letting them make decisions for what's best for their people. Ultimately, the Republicans decided not to do that just before the midterm election. So now that we're heading into a Congress where the Democrats control the House and the Republicans control the Senate, what realistically can get done legislatively?
Well, realistically, the Health Care Choices Plan can be introduced in the Senate, so at least members have something that they can use as talking about a solution that actually is much better and protects people with pre-existing conditions much better than Obamacare does. It actually devotes specific money to people with high risks and chronic conditions, unlike Obamacare, which dumped them in the same pool with everybody else, driving everybody else's costs up. So it's a better solution. I think Congress was just traumatized by what they'd been through with the rejection of putting so much effort into trying to do a repeal and replace and failing in 2017. They were afraid to try that again. But I think some of the senators in particular have said, well, that didn't work out real well. We cannot just stick our heads in the sand and pretend that health care is going to go away. We have to have a better answer. So I expect that there will be a debate over two very different approaches over the next couple of years. The Medicare for All, the government taking over the whole healthcare system. After Obamacare's failure, you'd think that maybe they would have learned a lesson, but no. They want to say, if you just give us all the money and all the control, we'll be fine and we'll be able to fix healthcare. We don't believe that. We believe that you've got to devolve power down to the states and ultimately to individuals to make better decisions, to give resources to people who are sick, who are lower income, who need help in purchasing health insurance, and to make sure that the rules direct people to private health insurance and not giving states the money that they would just say, oh, well, good, we're going to try our own single-payer universal coverage system at the state level. We are saying this money has to go to help people who are lower income. It has to go to private insurance. And if somebody's on a private plan they don't like in Medicare managed care, or Medicaid managed care, for example, they can take that money and opt out and get a private plan that their employer may be offering, but that they can't afford. So it's all about individual choice, local control, completely different approach than we're going to be hearing from the other side over the next 2 years in the health reform debate.
A couple quick follow-ups here. You mentioned the Medicare for All approach that more and more Democrats are behind, which is in complete contrast to what you just outlined in terms of more patient choice and more of a market approach. Is there any room for common ground between those two philosophies?
Well, I think that the more sensible, thoughtful Democrats realize Obamacare really is harming people. We had somebody when we launched our plan as a kind of conference several months ago, a state senator from Virginia read his phone and said, I just got an email from one of my constituents telling me that he just got the bill for his health insurance for his family. He said, I'm self-employed. I got to buy this myself. The premiums are $4,000 a month. And he said, that's my only choice. There's no other carrier offering coverage in my county. He said, what am I supposed to do? So conservatives have to have an answer. And our plan has been modeled. It would reduce premiums by at least 30%. It would bring much more competition into the market. And it would give people the ability to have health insurance that they own and control, and they're making decisions about what their insurance covered rather than Washington.
Grace Marie, I know you're more of the policy expert than the marketing expert here. Not talking about free market, but public relations type marketing here. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't known as Obamacare and we just kept calling it the ACA, how much easier would it be to get a bipartisan consensus? In other words, how much are Democrats resistant to tinkering or overhauling this thing because it's so closely linked to Obama?
I think there's just a lot of people who have dug in their heels. So yes, I think that, and President Obama himself, former President Obama, is basically continues to say, Obamacare is working great. He wants it to be called Obamacare, encouraging people to sign up for coverage, et cetera. So I think there are a lot of people who are dug in, but there are others, and I was starting to talk about this. There are others who really want to help make these markets better. Senator Alexander from Tennessee, for the chairman of the Senate Health Committee, basically has tried so hard last year to develop bipartisan consensus. Maybe they'll be able to do it in the new Congress, but I think it's just going to be so hard to get anything through the House now that Nancy Pelosi's in charge of making decisions about what goes through. I think they want to set up much more of a contrast in a debate between total government control and, thank heavens, the ideas that we've offered them that they seem to be embracing with much more local and individual control. But that's going to be the debate, and I just unfortunately don't see any effort for legislation to fix this. But the Trump administration is doing a huge amount of work in giving people more regulatory flexibility. In fact, we've been working with states to help them see the options for waiver authority to use the Obamacare money differently at the state level in order to be able to do a better job of helping their individual and small group markets heal from the damage that Obamacare has done. And several states that have done early waivers to basically provide additional money for people who have high risks, so that takes the pressure off of their market. They've been able to reduce premiums by as much as 42%, just with a few changes to Obamacare. So I think that's going to be where we see the action over the next couple of years, is states coming forward with ideas to help their markets improve based upon using some of this waiver authority that the Trump administration is offering. And he's also offering lots of other things, too, we can perhaps talk about in another call, on the health reimbursement arrangements, association health plans, short-term limited duration plans. So there are going to be other options for people, and actually already are in some cases. And I think that's going to be what we see over the next couple of years, rather than the new legislation actually passing.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Grace Marie, there's a lot of people, regardless of their politics, who want change here, because you can't have $4,000 a month premiums, especially when you pile on deductibles that make it absolutely cost prohibitive for so many people. And so something has to be done. We'll see if it's all posturing or there's actual genuine effort to get this done, even though two different parties control things on Capitol Hill starting in January. But as always, we thank you very much for your insights and expertise, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this again in the new year.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Grace Marie Turner is president of the Galen Institute. I'm Greg Columbus reporting for Radio America.